Ken Stomsky here, and I am at the Hampden County Beekeepers Association booth at the Eastern States Exposition, and we have an important guest that we have with us today. Today I have Allison Hager, who is the American Honey Princess. First off, welcome to West Springfield, Massachusetts, Allison.
Yeah, thank you for having me
All
here.
right. So where are you from?
I'm from Bellevue, Iowa, so I'm on the eastern side of the state, right along the Mississippi River.
Excellent. Now,
Yeah, very nice.
how do you become American Honey Princess?
That's a great question. So I'm a part of the American Beekeeping Federation, and so every year they're looking for two spokespeople, a queen and a princess, to represent the beekeeping industry. So they're looking for someone who has a passion about teaching others about honeybees.
So, what are your duties as American Honey Princess?
I get to travel all across the United States, attending a lot of fairs, festivals, doing school presentations, educating others about our honeybees, explaining why they're so important and why we can help them.
So, now, a question a lot of people might be asking: how did you get into bees?
That's a great question as well. So with the Iowa honey producers, I have a youth scholarship where I got all my bees and equipment paid for. And ever since then, I've just been a really big advocate for our honeybees and our other pollinators. And so, yeah, that's just how I got started, and it just has kept evolving ever since.
Right. So, you know a lot about bees then.
I like to think so.
All right. Can you tell our viewers why are bees important?
Yeah, so a lot of our pollination is dependent specifically on our honeybees. So about 1/3 of the food we eat every day is dependent on our pollinators. So if we didn't have any pollinators, so our honeybees, our butterflies, we wouldn't have, our apples, our oranges, our almonds. But our honeybees are our number one pollinator. So they do 80% of that pollination.
No bees, not much food.
Exactly.
All right. Now, have I heard something about a bee shortage?
So there's always been a little bit of a struggle with our honeybee populations. There's a lot of things that go into that. People using pesticides, just spraying chemicals. The varroa mite, that's a big pest within the hive that really destroys bee hives. But over these last few years, there's been a lot more research being done, and so we're kind of stabling off, trying to get that increase in population back up.
Just curious, do honeybees and bumblebees work together?
Not necessarily. They don't really work together. They're two different types. But bumblebees still pollinate, but just not as much as our amazing honeybees.
Still very important to have around.
Still important.
Yeah. So now, how many bees are in a typical hive?
So it kind of depends on the health of the hive, obviously. But a healthy hive can have around 60 to 80,000 bees in it at one time.
All right. Now, let's define hive for a second.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the little brown things stuck up on a tree somewhere. We're talking about the boxes that honey is.
Yep, the boxes that are stacked on each other. And so each colony, that's just one single hive.
So one little box is a colony?
Well, you can keep stacking boxes up, and that'll still be one colony. So it's not necessarily different queens and her daughters in there. It's just one. Yep.
Yes, still the one queen.
Yep, still one queen for as many boxes as you want to put on top.
And you said 60 to 80,000.
60 to 80, yes.
That's a lot of bees.
It is a lot of bees. So when you got a couple hives going, you can have a lot of bees in there.
Now, when you see the beekeeper tending to the hive, you see them using the smoke. All right, now, what kind of smoke is that, and what is it doing to the bees?
So bee smoke is completely safe. So what us beekeepers are doing is we're putting materials into the smoker to start a fire. So it could be dry grass clippings, wood chips. Really depends on what the beekeeper wants to do this. But what they're doing is they're just diluting the pheromone smell that honeybees are giving off to one another. So honeybees don't have ears, so they communicate through movements, and then they also communicate through pheromones. So what we're doing with that bee smoke is diluting that. And then we're also kind of confusing them. So they think there's a fire, and so they direct their attention to eating honey instead of flying in our faces.
Okay, great. Now, how long does it actually take to make the honey?
That's a great question. So
I have a lot of great questions.
Yeah, I know. They're all really great. They're all really different. You did tell me. So it really just depends on, how many bees are in the hive, if there's enough floral sources outside to collect that nectar from. So it kind of depends on each specific colony, but a lot of beekeepers will start collecting that honey maybe even at the end of June or July. It really depends on where you are in the state too, but you can get honey fairly early in the season.
And, I'm just going to quickly reach across here because I see something and I see honey that's still in a comb.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's just spray some more.
Now, question with that, can you actually eat the comb in there?
Yeah, you definitely can. I always say it's very similar to gum. So you kind of chew it to get the nutrients out of it, then you can just kind of pull it out, or you can just eat it as well. It's up to your own preference.
Mm-hmm. How long will that last, or honey in general? How long will that last?
For all we know, it never expires. It's something you can always have on hand.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. So now, if you come across a colony in your yard, a hive somewhere, what should you do? Because at this point, you might not know if it's a bee or a yellow jacket or something else. So when you notice something on your property, what's the first thing you should do?
So I'm assuming you're talking more about like swarms, just bees that are kind of making their own colony.
Right.
So with honeybees, they're making a honeycomb usually within like a tree, something up high.
Mm-hmm.
As for like the hornets or whatever, they're making more of like those paper type nests. So they look
Right.
a lot different than our typical honeycomb does. So I say with the honeybees, definitely call a beekeeper in your area. Usually there's resources online. If you look up the local beekeeping state organization, they usually have a list. We call it a swarm list of different beekeepers you can call in the area. So that way they'll come and, get the bees off and take it to wherever they will go with it.
So a hive for the bees, at least, can be removed so that they're not harmed.
Yep. It's a win-win. You get rid of them so they're not in your way. And then it gives a beekeeper kind of essentially free bees. And then they get to take it home and do whatever they want with it.
Do they get to populate that into their own existing colony? I mean, are there clans? Do they not get along, or it just happens?
So kind of back to the pheromone thing, they all know who their queen is, so they all know where their home is. So most beekeepers, if they're picking up a swarm, they'll just put it in an empty box because most beekeepers have extra boxes laying around to start a new colony. So
okay.
Just put it into a new one and hope they grow in population and produce more honey for us.
All right. This might be related to the pheromones you've been talking about. If a bee stings you, are other bees going to now come after you and try to sting you as well?
They're definitely more prone to because they do smell that venom, that pheromone that they're giving off. Not necessarily that they're all going to attack you, but they do smell that. They do know something is going on. And so they're kind of more on alert than at that point.
You really seem to know a lot about bees.
I have one question. Why am I different colors of honey?
That is a great
Okay,
question.
yeah. So if the microphones didn't pick it up, my producer just asked, why are there different colors of honey?
So it just depends on the floral sources that the honeybees are collecting the nectar from. So usually the lighter honey is more in the springtime, and then your darker flowers tend to just be more the floral sources that are blooming in fall. So here in the United States, we have 300 different varieties. So it can be as light as water, as dark as a brown color, and then it varies in taste too. So like a lot of beekeepers would take their hives up to California to help pollinate the almond crop. So we'll call that almond honey. Not that it doesn't necessarily taste like almonds, but just know exactly where the honeybees are collecting that nectar from.
All right. Is that local honey? We've heard adages where, well, if you're sick, take a tablespoon of local honey because it helps with the histamines. What have you heard about this?
Definitely taking honey is a great way to boost your immune system up when you're not feeling the best. And it's also something that's really awesome to use on wounds as well. So if you just apply honey to a cut or a scrape, it helps speed up that healing process.
Wow. That one I never heard of.
Yeah.
Oh.
Something you can use in a lot of different ways.
Okay. So let's talk about the commercial hives again. A beekeeper keeping a colony.
Yeah.
How far away will a bee travel from that?
They usually like to stick fairly close, but if there's not enough floral sources, they will fly miles outside.
Miles?
Yes, yep. So they'll fly out and about to collect those floral sources.
And is that like in one day or?
So they'll make about 10 to 15 trips every day. So again, it kind of just depends on where those floral sources are. And each trip they make is one specific type of flower. So they might make 10 different trips and they might visit 10 different flowers. Or maybe they'll visit, they visit a lot of different flowers.
Right.
But that's how things are able to be pollinated because they're visiting dandelions on each time they're on that specific trip. So, yeah.
Right. So how can people help the bee population?
I always like to say the greatest way to help them is just planting different types of flowers. A great way to do that is finding things in your area that bloom at different times of the season. They like a variety in their diet, just like you and I do. And so they just like different things throughout the season to be collecting that nectar.
Great. Anything that might be important that I forgot to ask you about?
We covered a lot of great questions. Just to really re-emphasize, our honeybees are our number one pollinator. Great way to help them is planting flowers. And honey is something that never expires. I always say it's a really magical type thing because it never expires. It's something you can use in addition to just a snack. It's something you can use to make yourself feel better in various different ways. So it's really important that we
You can use it as a sweetener when you cook, and it takes on a different form when a different flavor depending on how you're utilizing it in the kitchen as well.
Exactly. Yep. A lot of people like to use that darker colored honey when they're cooking, but more of the lighter color stuff just when they're eating.
Excellent. So what's the best way for people to learn more about honeybees and honey in the American Honey Association?
Yeah. So I always suggest, Google's a great friend. So just looking up the different sort of state organization, there's a lot of different information out there, even specific to your region to find, how to help the honeybees, how to help local beekeepers in your area, or, ways that everyone can just help in some sort of way. So I definitely suggest looking into the state organizations or even our American Beekeeping Federation website as well.
Great. Allison, thanks for educating us and spending some time with us today.
Yes, thank you for everything.
And then in a separate